Welcome to the Michigan Man Podcast on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew, for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Joining us in just a moment will be beat writer Orion Sang from the Detroit Free Press with his thoughts on a disappointing loss to Michigan State at home on Sunday. First, a few of my thoughts to get us going today. Sunday's loss at home was disappointing, but we are still right in the thick of the Big Ten race. We have to bounce back in the home finale this week against Nebraska, win on the road at Maryland, and then it could all come down to a final game matchup with the Spartans at the Breslin. It will not be easy, rest assured. Even though Michigan State was dealing with injuries, you knew they would bring it on Sunday. They did, and they rode the play of Cassius Winston to a W at Chrysler. This was a game in which we could not afford to have a long drought or shoot poorly from the outside, but that happened. We were getting a lot of good looks and not knocking down shots, and we also took our fair share of bad shots. Maybe more disappointing was the subpar defensive performance, especially in the first half. We did make the adjustments at half, but you still have to hit your open shots and play better D, and we just did not. So give the Spartans their due. They played hungry, and they brought their A game on the road. Now we have to bounce back and win the next two, which would set up a huge season finale against the Spartans at the Breslin. My guest today says it's possible. Up next on our Game Day segment is beat writer Orion Sang from the Detroit Free Press. Here on the Michigan Man, in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. Here with us on our Game Day segment this week to talk Michigan hoops and, of course, what happened on Sunday at Chrysler against the Spartans is Orion Sang from the Detroit Free Press. Orion, great to have you back with us.
Good to be back. Thanks for having me on.
Well, Sunday was, of course, the much ballyhooed game between the Spartans and Michigan, and it really turned into the Cassius Winston Clinic, didn't it?
Yeah. I'm not sure if I expected the fireworks that kind of occurred in the first half there and then throughout the game. I didn't really anticipate that going in.
Well, you know, when you looked at that offensive attack that the Spartans came in with, I think at the end of the Rutgers game, we saw them running that high ball screen offense, basically letting everything run off of Cassius. If he didn't shoot, he found people. And again, I think that might have caught John Beilein and the staff by surprise because this isn't something that they've done for 40 minutes in a game, this kind of an offense, is it?
No. I think part of this is, I was talking with some people after the game, Michigan State might be a better team right now, even though they have two starters who are injured. They might be a better team just in terms of letting Cassius be able to handle the entire offense and do everything there because he's able to do it. He's able to handle the ball in every possession, to look for shots, create shots. He's been really good. He's probably favorite for Big Ten Player of the Year, I have to imagine right now. So he's really good, and this increased role in the offense has been good for him, I think.
Well, the Spartans, they haven't really looked that sharp on offense the last few weeks that I've seen them, but along with Cassius, they were really dialed in on Sunday, weren't they?
Yeah, they were, and I think some of it was Michigan made some mistakes in the ball screen coverage. There were times when it seemed like Teskey was late getting back to the big man, and that led to some layups and a couple dunks for Xavier Tillman. And some of his teammates left open shooters on the wings. But honestly, I think most of it was just Cassius because I don't know if Michigan's ball screen defense has ever played a point guard as surgical as Cassius was. So a lot of it has to do with him. He was just so good. No,
absolutely. I mean, I kept thinking as I was watching the game and then after the game, what could Michigan have done different? I really don't know. Do you?
I honestly don't know either because, I mean, you think about the way Michigan plays their ball screen defense. It's they hedge, right? They hedge on the ball screen. John Teskey, that's their MO. So I don't know. If you wanted to change something, like it wouldn't be changing the entire ball screen defense like fundamentally because teams just don't do that. Maybe you ask Teskey not to hedge as hard and maybe try to get back quicker. I don't know. But, I mean, like, the one thing that they did do pretty well was they limited Cassius and his three-point shooting because he's an elite three-point shooter, and he was 0 of 3 yesterday. So they stopped that. They just weren't able to stop anything else in terms of Cassius in his game.
Do you think he cemented Big Ten Player of the Year with that performance on Sunday?
Yeah, honestly, I think so. It was pretty close between him and Haps, but I mean, Michigan State looks like it's going to win the Big Ten, and I guess that will probably have some play into who wins Big Ten Player of the Year, even though maybe it shouldn't. But I mean, he's been really good. So and he's about to lead this team to the Big Ten title, and this team has been depleted by injuries, so that should also count for something.
Well, as impressive as Winston was for the Spartans, I thought Xavier Simpson was pretty darn good too. He more than did his part, though, didn't he?
Yeah, I thought he did a decent job in the first half of, attacking and doing what he could, because Michigan State was playing pretty far off of him, and I thought Xavier was still able to get to the basket a few times. But I think Michigan State's game plan was they wanted Xavier to take the most shots on offense, and he did. And that probably went the way that Michigan State and Townsville wanted it to, because Xavier's a great point guard, but I don't know if he's the guy that you want taking a lot of threes. And he was like 2 for 7, I believe.
Yeah.
I don't know. That might have been Michigan State's game plan. Izzo alluded to it after the game in terms of having him shoot threes because they played so far off of him. And Cassius was going underneath ball screens too, which basically is saying, like, look, shoot it from outside.
Coach B usually puts the pieces of the puzzle together this time of the season. We're used to that. But on offense, there just seems to be something missing, and really it has been for most of the year. It's really hard to put a finger on, isn't it?
Yeah. If I had to try, I'd probably just say it's a lack of shooting, because this team's three-point shooting isn't really what I expect from a normal, John Beilein team. And if he had told me that Michigan would be 24-4 and average 33-34% from three-point shooting, I wouldn't really believe it. It's hard to imagine that. This team is just so different in terms of how they've been successful from other teams that he's had. So it's a little weird, and I think people have to adjust to it. I don't know how much the offense can get better just because of how teams can play them. I think Michigan State showed the formula in terms of switching everything, going under screens with Xavier. I think that's a formula that other teams could adapt. Obviously, you have to have a big man who's able to switch screens and not get burnt, and Xavier Tillman was pretty good yesterday. But I think other teams could try to replicate that going forward, and I'm not really sure where Michigan can improve to beat that type of defense.
Well, offensively, as you said, and I think it's pretty clear with 3 games left, this is not a good shooting team. The numbers bear that. I mean, it's not a bad shooting team, but it's not the kind of team John Beilein has had the past 7 or 8 years or 3 years, however far you want to go back, But at this point, you really don't know what he can do. I don't know what he can try to sort of get this team out of their funk. Do you?
No. I think it starts with one player, though, in particular, and I think that's Jordan Poole, because if you're talking about a guy who can make teams pay for switching screens, I think you start with Jordan Poole, because Jordan Poole has the arsenal to really, take big men off the dribble or, hit threes over them, right, if they give him space, and then maybe create, with his ball handling. So I think they have to fix Poole, because I don't know if he's been playing to his potential over the past couple months. His shooting numbers are down. He seems to make a few mistakes every game that could be avoided. So they need to kind of fix his game and get him going. And I've asked about it, and it's not. Beilein hasn't really had an answer. Otherwise, he would have found it by now. It's still a work in progress. But I think they need to get Jordan going over the final stretch here.
No, absolutely. If we have a shooter out there, it is him. But Sunday against State, even when he's getting open looks, he's also taking some really bad shots right now.
Yeah. I hate to harp on a particular guy or really go after individual players, but I think if you ask Jordan this, he probably would agree. If you look back at the game and look back at the film, he didn't really have that great of a game on both ends. I think he struggled with Matt McQuaid, and he was pretty enthusiastic with his closeouts, too enthusiastic, I'd say. And then he I think there was that foul McQuaid threw on him. It was like a few seconds left in the shot clock. McQuaid pump faked, and Jordan fell for it. That also wasn't that great of a play. And then on offense, I think Jordan probably forced a few threes. He took a few deep ones, which has been a recurring problem. They've been talking all year about getting him to take threes closer to the line because he likes to really deep threes. Yeah. So I don't know. He's a very good player. He's very talented. He's been very key for his team this year. but they do need him to get going here down the stretch.
No, absolutely, they do. But another key factor on Sunday, and I'm hoping not moving forward, was Charles Matthews. So I know he had a wrist injury coming in, and then he had the ankle injury. I'm not sure if did that happen during the game Sunday, or was that coming into the game? He already had that ankle injury, Orion.
I hadn't heard anything about the ankle injury coming in, and it looked like he tweaked it during Sunday's game. But he has been dealing with a wrist injury all year. Basically, it's not a big thing. But he just has to ice his wrist after games. He was icing it after Penn State. I think it's just one of those things that lingers, and he has to deal with it. And from what Beilein was saying after the game, the ankle injury sounds like it'll be a short-term thing. But you're right; they do need Charles to get going. Getting a version of Charles the Charles that played really well in last year's tournament. They probably want that version of Charles because he was really good. He was pretty efficient. So if they could get that version, it would help the offense a ton. Yeah,
we've got to get Charles back on the offensive side. But I think on Sunday that was a good example to all of us how much he means to this team defensively. When he sat down with that first foul, I think it was for 47 seconds, into the game, it just throws the entire defense off when Charles is on the bench, doesn't it?
Yeah. I feel like there were a lot more open threes than I've been accustomed to watching this team this year. I think I mentioned this in one of the stories I wrote. It just seemed like Michigan gave up more open shots than they have to any other team this year from outside. I don't know. It was a lot of it was catches, some of it was mistakes, but it was uncharacteristic for Michigan's defense.
As poorly as we played an offense on Sunday and then struggled on defense, the long droughts are the one thing that have been very consistent so far this year and plagued this team all season. And, again, with 3 games left, it's a concern, but what can you do about that, Orion?
That seems to me like it's something that's always going to plague this team because it's been large enough of a sample size where we've seen them play almost an entire regular season now, and it seems at least every game there's one drought, and in the losses there are several droughts, like long extended droughts, and that really hurts the offense. Sometimes it just seems like they need a guy who can just, snap them out of it, someone who can be aggressive, who can score, create, I don't know, just someone who can step up and just get them out of this drought. Like Cassius, I feel like if Michigan State is having the long drought, they have Cassius, right? Or if Purdue is in this situation, it's Carson Edwards. Well, when Michigan is in these droughts, who's going to be that guy who can step up and sort of just lead the team out of it? I don't really know yet.
Well, after the game on Sunday, I was reading a lot online, about how Michigan got out-coached and out-schemed. But, really, if you watch that game, I think sometimes it's as simple as this. Michigan State just played a much better game.
Yeah, I think I was talking with someone after the game about this, but I think when it comes to football and basketball, I think coaching might matter a lot more in football in terms of the X's and O's, because in basketball, some of it just comes down to hitting shots, Honestly, I was a little surprised by Michigan State's adjustments on defense because last year you saw in Michigan's 2 wins that Michigan State didn't really change up how they defended ball screens. And this year they come out and they start switching screens. So give credit to Izzo and Michigan State because they did a very good job of adjusting. And now it's on John Beilein and Luke Yakovich and the staff to make their own adjustments. And I don't know, if you look at their track record, I would say they're pretty good at doing that. So I'm already looking forward to the rematch because it should be pretty good.
I think we're all going to look forward to that. But you've seen this team all year, Orion. Do you think this Michigan team has hit their ceiling and there's nowhere else for them to go as far as getting better at this point?
Yeah, it might sound like I'm pretty pessimistic from what I've said so far. They need to get the offense back to where it was in November and early December in those North Carolina games against Purdue. They need to find that stride. I think one of the things I've noticed is that there are very few times when they are able to calibrate Brazdeikis, Matthews, and Poole to play well together at the same time. Have you noticed the same thing? Sometimes it's one of them playing well or 2 of them, but never all 3. And all 3 played really well against North Carolina, and they blew North Carolina out, and they did that early in the year. I think they need to try to find a way to get all of them in sync, because that's the best version of this offense is when all 3 of those guys are just playing super well. Xavier's in command of the offense. Teskey's contributing. Like that is I think, the peak of this offense, and I think we may have seen that. They just need to get back to that.
Well, despite the disappointment of Sunday's loss, the Big Ten title, or at least a share of it, is still in play and a very real possibility, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It all comes down to that rematch at the Breslin Center. They need to win that game, basically, because, I mean, if you lose 2 to Michigan State, I don't see any way you win the title. But the bigger point that stands is that, even if they don't win the title, these are some issues that they need to sort out before March, because this team is still looking at a 2 or 3 seed heading into the tournament, and they've got everything ahead of them that they want to accomplish. So they just need to figure some of these issues out in offense, and they should be okay.
Absolutely. They have some things to figure out, and there's not a lot of room for error. Nebraska comes in this week for the last home game. Your thoughts on that matchup with the Huskers?
Nebraska looks like it's given up. I've watched them play a couple times. I believe Roby is out for the year with an injury. James Palmer hasn't really played that well this year, not as well as I might have expected. And Tim Miles is probably on his way out. So that should be, it's at home too. It's senior night. I don't really see any way Michigan loses that. And then that sets up 2 very pivotal games, because Maryland is at Maryland, and Maryland and Wisconsin are still hunting. They're still close. They're nipping at Michigan's heels in the Big Ten standings. So Michigan's kind of in this weird situation where it's like halfway between competing for the title and competing for seeding in the Big Ten tournament, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I think Nebraska, not that they're going to mail it in when they come in Thursday, but they're not playing well. The one that really scares me for is to get to the Breslin and have it be a game for a share of the Big Ten title. Is that game in Maryland. They really are a talented young team, and they play tough there.
Yeah, they're really good. I don't know, they might be probably the most talented team.
Yeah. And
just in terms of ball recruiting, Fernando, Jalen Smith, who's a McDonald's All-American. I really like the 2 freshmen that they have, Wiggins and Ayala. And then the point guard, of course, Cohen is really good. So they're a good team, and they're pretty hard to beat at home. That'll be a tough matchup for Michigan, and I think the key there is they need John Teske to stay out of foul trouble, because Bruno Fernando is a load inside.
Again, we've got 3 more left. A lot of things to fix, more than you would like to get fixed at this time of the year, but that's the way it is. So, final question for you, though, Orion. Sunday was a big day, not only because it was Michigan State. You don't have to say anything else more, but because former championship teams were honored, including the '89 national championship team. It was really nice to see Coach Fisher come back and hear the welcome he received, wasn't it?
It's a little weird for me because I grew up in Ann Arbor, and I was born long after they won a title, so I didn't really know about that team growing up. But reading about it, it does seem like the ending between Fisher and the program, it was a little, I don't know, it was unceremonious maybe. It was, I wouldn't say bitter, but it just seemed like a pretty big split. They fired him, and he had to move on with his life and his career. So I think it's always good to have this sort of reunion where you can get a guy who won the school's only national title, get him to come back and sort of reunite him with the program and create that bond again. It's never a bad thing. And they had so many alumni there. I think it was the most they've ever had under Beeline, probably the most they've ever had in general. It's good to create these bonds with former players and past teams.
I was around when Coach Steve Fisher was here and coaching, and he was a beloved coach while here. And, of course, we all know it's all documented how it went south, when it went south. But I think Coach Beeline was really, as you know, instrumental in getting him and the team back and honoring Fisher. Coach B's right. It really is something that it's healing, and it needed to be done.
Yeah, credit goes to John Beeline, because he's been very good about getting past players back who maybe weren't connected at all to this program, and getting coaches back and everyone back. He really wants to sort of honor the tradition and history of the program, and I think that means a lot to Michigan fans. It means a lot to those former players and former coaches. And it can mean a lot to the current players and future players as well. If they can be able to forge some relationships with, I don't know, Glenn Rice, Jalen Rose, that matters.
A healing day, not so much a great game for Michigan fans as far as the final outcome, 77-70, but we have 3 big games left, and who knows what can happen, so we shall see. Our guest here on the show today has been beat writer Orion Sang from the Detroit Free Press, and as always, Orion, we appreciate you taking the time and down the road in March when we get things going with the tournament, Big Ten tournament, or the NCAAs. We hope to get you back on.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Take care, Mike.
Quick Hits is next as we wrap it up for another week here on The Michigan Man on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. On Quick Hits today, Coach Kim Barnes-Arico and her team saw their 7-game winning streak come to an end on Sunday at the Breslin, falling to Michigan State 76-64. They will conclude the regular season on Sunday when Wisconsin visits Chrysler Center. They are 19-10 overall, 10-7 in the Big Ten. Hockey split a pair with number 6 Ohio State at Yost over the weekend. They will finish the regular season up in Madison against the Badgers this weekend. We are 13-12-7 overall, 9-8-5 in Big Ten play. Softball is off to a slow 4-6 start and will be out in California for the Judy Garman Classic this weekend, and it is a loaded-up tournament with UCLA, Tennessee, Oregon, Washington, and Cal State Northridge. Baseball is off to a perfect 6-0 start. They swept the Citadel down in Charleston over the weekend and will join softball on the coast for 3 this weekend when they visit Cal State Northridge. A reminder that our free show app is available from the Google and iTunes stores. You can also hear us weekly on Stitcher, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, and Spotify. If you get the show from iTunes, please take a minute to comment or rate the program, and we thank you in advance for doing that. That will do it for another show. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Have a great Wolverine week, everyone. Until next time, take care, and as always, go blue. Thanks for joining us today on The Michigan Man, here on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. Our listener lines are open 24/7 for your calls at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Or email us at themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. That's themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan, and is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!